What's up, everybody? Mike Walsh here. So today I want to talk about video games and how they've always tried to rip you off. Okay, because people are very mad right now, both because of Sony going like all digital, no physical in terms of the games. They're mad about Grand Theft Auto being $80, and I think people are right to be mad about those things. I'm not happy about either of those things myself. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's important for like your peace of mind to like have bigger historical context for these kinds of things. Same thing with like politics. And no, I'm not going to go on a political tangent here, but like, you know, if you're really outraged about whatever's going on, a war, inflation, whatever, corruption in the government, whatever, it's important to like study history, I think, so that you have some longer term like understanding of how severe those things are relative to the past. Because in my personal experience, like when I study history, like Will Durant is like my favorite author, and he wrote this giant world history anthology called The Story of Civilization. That's extremely fascinating. And yeah, like the more you read it, the more you realize there's nothing new under the sun. The more you realize that everything that's happening in terms of politics, war, social issues, the economy, whatever, it just all, has been done and repeated all the way back to antiquity. So like to me, that's, you could view that in a glass half empty kind of way where you're like, oh no, nothing ever gets better. But I view it in a kind of comforting way where it's like, oh, okay, that helps me find some peace with whatever I'm like distressed about right now, because I just know that people in the past were also distressed about that stuff. So that quick aside done. With video games, like they were always trying to rip you off. Okay, it's like there's a lot of stuff that people can romanticize about the past and shit on the future, or excuse me, shit on the present over. But you do need to note the flaws of how, the flaws in terms of like how things were in the past, and to kind of take off the rose tinted glasses and like overlook the nostalgia and kind of recognize things for what they truly were. Because yes, don't get me wrong, I also hate games getting more expensive. I don't want things to go just digital. I also dislike all of the ways in which all of the more kind of current gaming practices where they're trying to nickel and dime you with microtransactions and stuff like that. And like more and more excessively just leaving like things out of the game that should be part of the main game, but then they just sell as DLC later. Like I don't like any of that stuff. Don't get me wrong. But video games have always tried to rip you off, right? Like, and GameRanks actually did a good video about this recently, where they kind of just compared what games cost in like the 90s versus now, and how small the teams were and how small the budgets were, and just sort of like try to proportionately compare those things. And they're like, yeah, they were ripping you off more back then than they are even now. If you just like adjust the numbers, which I thought made sense. But additionally, it's like, just think of like the arcade experience, right? Like arcade video games are just designed to like eat up your quarters, right? And that's why they tried to make them like fast and addictive and difficult, right? Like that's one of the reasons they gave you the quick game over screens and whatnot was, yeah, they wanted you to put another fucking quarter in. And just think of how much money people wasted back in the day. Think of someone who grew up in the arcades and went and did that every weekend and had their favorite arcade game they played all the time. Think of how much, especially adjusted for inflation, how much money in terms of popping in quarters that person used on that game. Yeah, that's just greed trying to fuck you over as a customer, right? That's just capitalism at work, right? So that's not new, right? Like, it goes back to the 80s, right? And additionally, like, this isn't a money thing. This is just more a people romanticizing the past. Like, there's a lot of people who are mad that games hold your hand too much these days, that games are too easy these days. And I get that, and there's a lot of truth to that, and I agree in certain cases with that. But like, like for example, some people whine about like platforming games not having a live system anymore, or just any sort of like side-scrolling old-fashioned game, so like an action game, action platform, or whatever, not having a live system anymore, and not having that game over option anymore. And it's like, that happened because games were small back then, right? Like Castlevania is a short game. Castlevania for the NES, if you watch someone play that who's like really good at the game, they can beat it in like a half hour or like 40 minutes. It's not very long. And part of the point of the difficulty and the live system is to stretch out the experience, right? It's to say, okay, if we make this too easy, they'll buy the game and beat it in 45 minutes. We need to make this a several hour experience where they have to try and try again. And yeah, we're going to both make it hard as fuck, but we're also going to make a live system. That means that you just get a game over screen past a point, and where there's no save system, right? Like you have to beat it all in one go. Like that was a way to accommodate the length, right? And fair enough, right? Like if they couldn't make games like that very long and massive back then, they had to do something. But we just can do it now, right? Like you can just make Castlevania now, a game like Castlevania, a side-scrolling like action platformer like that, and make it a 10-hour game, make it an 8-hour game, whatever. And if you're going to do that, you don't need to make it as punishingly difficult, and you don't need to add this pain in the ass live system, right? Same with like Crash Bandicoot, right? Or any other game. Like you can just make them way bigger now. So yeah, that's like an example to me where people can too easily fall into the trend of just acting like the present sucks and the way things were in the past or in their youth were just totally perfect and way better. And it's like, well, if we're more objective, I think neither of those things are totally true. Not that there aren't like new trends that suck sometimes, and not that there aren't new trends that are sucking right now. Again, I don't like $80 games. I don't like microtransactions. I don't like bullshit DLC. I don't like going all digital. But I also don't like having all the games be at the arcade and having them just be designed to milk quarters out of me ad infinitum. I don't like that either, right? And I don't like every game being like Castlevania, where it's a short game and hard as fuck, and and where I have to I can't save or anything, and it's all just designed to stretch out the short experience. I don't like that either, even though I like Castlevania quite a lot and I have beaten Castlevania, but I don't want every game to be like that. And yeah, games back then were fucking expensive too, right? Makes me think of like that 70s show. When Kelso starts tampering with the whatever gaming console it is that they're playing Pong on, and Red allows him to do it, and they both get really into it. Excuse me. They both get really into it, and because they want to make the game more difficult. They both mastered it, and they want to make the paddles smaller so that it's harder to block the ball with the paddles. And they take the machine apart and start tampering with it, and they succeed. But Red says something about and I forget which figure he uses, but he says something like, yeah, okay, Kelso, go for it. And guess what? If you mess up and you break it, then you owe me $500 or something. Like he lists a pretty big amount of money, hundreds of dollars in the 70s. I haven't checked, but I'd wager if we checked for inflation, that console is more expensive than like a PS5 is. You know what I mean? So that's a real thing. Again, games were never friendly to our wallets. Okay, that's just not the reality. So that doesn't mean that we should just take everything lying down and not resist new trends that we dislike. But we also, I think, for our own mental health, if nothing else, shouldn't act like the sky is falling anytime there's some new development that actually, from an historical point of view, isn't that fucking new. So those are my thoughts on that. Let me know what you think. You agree, disagree, whatever. Check out my first YouTube channel. This is my second YouTube channel. My first channel is called Michael Walsh MMA. I will link it down in the description box. On that channel, I talk about MMA. I used to be an MMA fighter. I used to teach jiu-jitsu. I'm a lifelong martial artist. I've been watching MMA since 2005. We've got a big event this weekend in the UFC 329, McGregor versus Holloway 2. If you're interested in any of that stuff, go check it out. If not, you just like nerd shit, stick around here, like and subscribe. And in any case, take care.